The angel Gabriel from heaven came.
This video is not just another vlog about a fancy lunch in a lovely English manor house in the gorgeous Devonshire countryside. This is a tale that, yes, involves beautiful architecture, gourmet food, stunning drone footage, but also an intriguing history lesson, complete with a touching love story and connections to music, literature, and religion. And as an added bonus, an educational interview with the local vicar. Here's a travel tip from Ian and me. If you want to enjoy a visit to a stunning manor house like this one, but you can't afford to spend the night in their hotel for hundreds of pounds, or even eat dinner there for a king's ransom, consider having afternoon tea or lunch. You get the joy of visiting, seeing the lovely home and gardens, eating delicious food, but with a much lower price tag. So join us today for our visit to Lewtrenchard Manor near Oakhampton in Devon, England. It is a lovely family-run luxury hotel and restaurant. Ian and I first ate lunch here 2 years ago and were anxious to return for another meal. However, we discovered there was much more to Lewtrenchard than we realized on our first visit, and were intrigued to learn more about the home's fascinating history this time around. I love this little corner with the, I don't know what it is, a shrine, a fountain, a well. Whatever it is, it's just a lovely little spot in the garden. Everything here is cool, from the little gargoyle fountain in this trough to the dovecote above it. The whole manor is made out of this wonderful Devonshire slate and granite. All the details are amazing, like even this little bell on the side of the chimney above the ivy-covered walls. I could just stand here and look at the detail all day and listen to this fountain. With the chap holding 2 geese spewing water. Okay, one last detail to obsess over before we walk through the front door. I had to note the date of 1620, so I took this photo. But I also love the double-faced gargoyle action going on above the date inscription. As you enter the front door of Lewtrenchard, this is what the floor looks like in the entryway before going into the reception area of the main house. I think it's wonderful because it's a lovely basket weave pattern, which is made out of stone. This means it's not only beautiful, but it's practical for a country house in a part of the world that gets a fair amount of rain. This is the reception area where you wait to be seated if you've booked a meal in the restaurant, or where you can lounge if you are a guest at the hotel. Now let's explore one of the private dining rooms. This is one of Lewtrenchard's private dining rooms, which is amazing because of all the wood paneling and these fabulous paintings along the ceiling. While the home was built in 1620, it's assumed that these paintings were done in the late 1800s. They depict various virtues such as charity, justice, ambition, doctrine, religion, imagination, imagination, vigilance, harmony. The one male figure in the room is valor. It's just magnificent to think about what the story might be behind all these paintings. And this is the library in Lewtrenchard. Before going into the restaurant, we decided to take a peek at the inner courtyard that you overlook from the dining room. And yes, I managed to find magenta flowers nestled in the corner. They needed to be documented, of course. After ordering our meal, I made a quick stop in the cloakroom to wash my hands. Even the bathroom where you wash your hands has the most twee little window. And I love the fact that I'm having rhubarb at lunch and the hand soap and lotion is rhubarb scent. Not just one rhubarb. Rhubarb. Okay, now I'm going to give a quick recap of the delicious food we ate. But be sure to stick around for the most important part of the video, which is a visit to the church next door, where we learn more about the fascinating past of Lewtrenchard House and its most famous owner. Our meal started with a loaf of fresh bread, warm from the oven, along with a mountain of creamy whipped butter. Then we enjoyed a tasty cauliflower and curry soup, followed by a crispy pig cheek with turnip and apple. I'm trying crispy pig cheek, which I don't think I've ever eaten before. Oh, interesting. The idea of the pig cheek kind of concerned me, but it's just pork and it's really delicious. And then Ian had flowers to eat. Actually, it was a courgette, aka zucchini, with olive and flowers on top. It came with the lamb entree, and it was all delicious. For dessert, I had this sour rhubarb and strawberry ice. It was phenomenal. We were splurging, so Ian also got a dessert, which was a milk chocolate ganache with pistachio, honey, and creme fraiche. It was gorgeous and tasted as great as it looked. In between being served courses at lunch, I amused myself by looking at the paintings on the wall in the dining room and inventing the fictional story of how both Sir Walter Raleigh and George Washington had previously been guests at this house and eaten in this very dining room. After coming back home to Texas and doing some research, I realized that Lewtrenchard indeed has famous literary connections. It turns out Sir Arthur Conan Doyle visited Lewtrenchard around the time that he was writing the well-loved adventure, The Hound of the Baskervilles, set in nearby Dartmoor. Some people believe that Lewtrenchard Manor is the house depicted in that story. During lunch, we did some research about the famous owner of Lewtrenchard Manor from the 1800s, the Reverend Sabine Baring-Gould. Turns out he was a famous man who had a most incredible life story. Here are a few highlights. He grew up in Lewtrenchard Manor when he wasn't touring Europe with his wealthy family. He was a prolific author who published over 1,200 works. He was also an avid archaeologist. He is most well known for having written the hymns Now the Day is Over and Onward Christian Soldiers, as well as transcribing English folk songs throughout Devon and Cornwall. He refurbished the manor house as well as the church next door, embellishing them with artwork and beautiful architectural elements. He became a curate for the Church of England in 1864 and later became the vicar in Lewtrenchard in 1881. While working as a curate, Sabine met a young girl who worked in a mill and fell in love with her. She was 14 when they met, but after she spent several years being prepared to make the transition from being a mill worker to a vicar's wife, at 18, she wed Baring-Gould. During their 48-year marriage, they had 15 children that they raised in Lewtrenchard Manor. After lunch, we took a wander around the house to see more of the lovely rooms in this property and imagine the Baring-Gould family who lived there so long ago. You can just imagine them having a party and after dinner retiring to the lounge where some woman would play a song on the pianoforte and sing along to entertain the group, just like in all those British TV shows. This ballroom is an amazing room. I mean, we love a lot of rooms in this place, but all the carvings along the ceiling and the ceiling itself, it's just great. Really, the best part is that magnificent fireplace. The gold and all of the detailed artwork is amazing on it. After exploring the house, we went next door hoping to learn about Reverend Sabine Baring-Gould's life as a vicar. You see, before this day, I didn't know a lot about vicars, not accurate information anyway. The first time I heard of vicars and Anglican clergy was reading Pride and Prejudice as a girl and getting to know William Collins. He was a poor and unfortunately ridiculous character. Then I got to know the incomparable Geraldine Granger, the title character in the hilarious Vicar of Dibley, one of our family's favorite Britcoms. Well, this leads me to a funny story about Ian. Longtime viewers know that we named our eldest son Trent after a small village and a river in England. When Trent was 6 months old, we took him to the village of Trent in search of a photo op. As we wandered around this tiny village, we happened to see a man dressed like a priest. Ian, much to his polite British mother's horror, did something very American and walked right up to the man and asked, "Are you the vicar of Trent?" The vicar was incredibly kind and agreed to hold our baby for a photo. Here is that really lousy photo of the funny experience. We treasure this photo because it is such a hilarious memory and now a family legend. So armed with that incomplete and rather bizarre perception of what being a vicar is all about, we went next door to the lovely Lewtrenchard Church to see if we could learn about Sabine Baring-Gould as a vicar. We were fortunate enough to find the current vicar in the church. And after looking around the church a bit and appreciating the lovely windows and the beautiful wood carvings, we saw the list of previous vicars, including Sabine Baring-Gould himself, and we wanted to know more about him from the current parson's point of view. So we were delighted that the vicar was kind enough to sit down with us and have a chat. Here is an excerpt of that conversation.
Hello, my name is Philip Conway and I am the parish priest here at St Peter's Lewtrenchard on the Lewtrenchard estate. I'm also the parish priest of 5 other parishes between here and Lifton where I live.
Okay, so what do you know about Mr. Sabine Baring-Gould?
The Reverend Sabine Baring-Gould. I know quite a bit about him peppered in different ways because I have particular interests that dovetail with the interests and his life story. The first thing being a cathedral chorister as a boy and having been heavily involved in church music, is the first thing I remember is seeing his name at the bottom of 2 things that we used to sing regularly in church. Baring-Gould was from the Anglo-Catholic or Tractarian wing of the church, which he liked to do things in a particularly ritualistic way. So churches were full of beautiful things, clergy wore vestments, it was far more sacramental than the church had become. But one of the other things of this part of the church was an alliance with and for the poor. So a lot of these churches that were, more Catholic, more ritualistic in their worship, were in the poorest parts of our cities. Quite often they'd be referred to as slum priests because they were people quite often from wealthy families with an awful lot of family money behind them, and they would go and serve in the poorest parts of the country. And we're talking, if we go back into the 19th century, there was no education, there was no health, there was nothing, and the church clergy such as him would go to places and spend their own money and resources and use their own family in building schools, like the school up on the main road that was built by Baring-Gould.
So that is one of the things that I found first most interesting about his life story is, when I heard that he was a parson or vicar, whatever the appropriate term is, and I'm, thinking Pride and Prejudice, the poor vicar, and I'm like, how did he have a big manor house like this? And then we start reading his life story, and he grew up, obviously, as part of a very wealthy family.
Yeah. But the other thing that is worth remembering, and it's sometimes laughed at in books and things, but there is truth to it, is that if a grand family had children, the heir inherited the estate, the second son joined the army, and the third one became a parson.
Right, that was the other thing, is it was passed down from one generation to the other, right? Having the parsonage or whatever.
Right. In the Church of England, the law is still there, but it changes because of the way things change generally. But when a new priest is appointed in the Church of England, the bishop obviously involved, the members of the church are involved, but there is this thing called the patron, a person or a body that have the right of appointing the vicar. And it's quite useful actually, because it means that you don't just have one person deciding. The congregation don't choose who they want, because who they want might not be who they need, and so forth. And where you have estates like this, country estates, quite often the patron was the squire. And that's how he, when the living became vacant, he was the squire, and so he appointed himself as the parson. While he was at Aubrey, he met a young lady in the parish, who I think was quite young when he met her, but she was working in the mill. But obviously, somebody somewhere thought that this was quite a good match. And his vicar, in order that everything could be done seemingly and properly, arranged for this girl to go and live with his cousin, who I think was the rector of Bedale, or Leyburn in North Yorkshire, for a couple of years to learn middle-class manners.
Right, middle-class manners.
How to be a vicar's wife. I think that's really exciting, because here is, he was, the movement that he was working with was all about people improving themselves.
Right.
And an awful lot of people would work for that, but wouldn't be prepared to be involved in it himself.
Wouldn't be prepared to marry beneath your station.
Exactly.
So that was the other part of the story I found fascinating. So he married Grace when she was 18, after she had been sent off and properly groomed to become a vicar's wife.
Yes.
And then went on to have 15 children. And 14 of them lived to adulthood, which is astonishing.
Yeah, it is normal. It was normal to have lots of children, and it was normal to bury about half of them, wasn't it?
Right. Yeah, well, and when we're eating lunch in that big house, I thought, well, this is a big house, but if you had 14 children, that'd be some people to fill it up, wouldn't it? That and the staff.
But I don't know about you. I've had the privilege and good fortune to go to some very nice places to stay or to have dinner, similar places to that. And some of them you think, wow, it was nice to go, but I wouldn't want to live here. But I could live there. It is very homely, isn't it? You can imagine a big family enjoying living in that house.
It's comfortable. It's not drafty and severe. And well, I would love to see their graves. That would be interesting.
Yeah.
These are the graves of Sabine Baring-Gould and his wife, Grace. Even though she was much younger than him, he did outlive her. As a tribute to their great love story, her grave marker at the bottom says in Latin, "Half my soul," which I found very touching. Please stay tuned for the next vlog in the series, in which we will finally visit the gorgeous South Devon coast. We thoroughly enjoyed our very memorable day at Lewtrenchard. Thanks for watching this video, and do something good in the world today.